In the sun-drenched city of San Jose, California, sitting amidst modern developments and palm trees, stands a structure that refuses to make sense. It is an architectural anomaly that defies every standard rule of logic, symmetry, and design. This is the Winchester Mystery House. To call it a mansion is an understatement. It is a sprawling, chaotic labyrinth that stretches across 24,000 square feet. Inside, it contains 160 rooms, 10,000 individual panes of glass, 2,000 doors, and 47 fireplaces. But it isn't the sheer scale of the estate that draws millions of visitors from around the globe. It is the madness hidden within the method. Imagine walking through a home where a staircase leads you up, winding turn after turn, only to smash directly into a solid ceiling. Imagine opening a door expecting a bedroom or a closet, only to find a solid brick wall, or worse, a drop straight down into a kitchen sink 2 floors below. There are windows installed in the floors and chimneys that stop feet short of the roof. For over a century, a dark legend has swirled around this property. The story tells us that this chaotic puzzle was built for one specific, terrifying purpose: to confuse the angry spirits of the dead. But is that the truth, or is it just a ghost story we tell ourselves? To truly understand the house, we have to look past the bizarre hallways and look into the heart of the woman who built them. A deeper look into history reveals a story that is less about a curse and more about a brilliant, grieving woman trying to build a world she could finally control. The story begins with the widow behind the walls, Sarah Lockwood Winchester. Born in 1839 in Connecticut, Sarah was not the mad woman of folklore. She was a woman of immense intelligence and high privilege. She was fluent in multiple languages, a gifted musician, and a member of high society. Her life seemed destined for a fairy tale ending when she married William Wirt Winchester, the heir to the massive Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The Winchester rifle was known as the gun that won the West. It was a marvel of engineering that brought the family unimaginable wealth. It changed the course of American history and warfare. But, as with all weapons of war, it also carried a heavy toll. The rifle contributed to the deaths of thousands of soldiers, settlers, and Native Americans. This uncomfortable truth that her fortune was built on bloodshed would eventually cast a long, haunting shadow over Sarah's life. But before the ghosts of the West could haunt her, tragedy struck much closer to home. In 1866, Sarah gave birth to a daughter named Annie. Just 6 weeks later, the infant died of marasmus, a severe form of malnutrition. Sarah was shattered. She never fully recovered from this heartbreak. Then, 15 years later, in 1881, the other pillar of her life collapsed. Her husband, William, died of tuberculosis. Suddenly, Sarah was left alone. She possessed a staggering inheritance, approximately $20 million, which would be hundreds of millions in today's currency. Her daily income alone would equate to tens of thousands of dollars in modern cash. She had nearly unlimited resources at her fingertips, but she had lost the only family she ever cared for. She was rich, powerful, and profoundly empty. This is where the history books end and the legend begins. The most enduring myth of the Winchester house starts with a trip to Boston. According to folklore, a grief-stricken Sarah visited a spiritual medium, desperate to contact her late husband. The medium allegedly fell into a trance and delivered a dire message from the other side. He told her that the Winchester family was cursed. The spirits of all those killed by the Winchester rifle were seeking vengeance, and they had already taken her daughter and husband. The medium warned Sarah that the ghosts were coming for her next. To survive, she was given a specific set of instructions. She must move west, and she must build a house for these restless spirits. But there was a catch. She must never stop building. The legend says she was told that as long as the hammers kept ringing, she would live, but if the construction ever ceased, she would die. While historians have never found a single shred of evidence that this medium existed or that this conversation ever took place, the story became the foundation of the house's identity. In 1885, Sarah moved to California and purchased a modest 8-room farmhouse. She hired teams of carpenters and laborers, and for the next 36 years, until her death in 1922, the property underwent a relentless, chaotic transformation. This was not a normal construction site. Sarah Winchester refused to hire an architect. She rejected blueprints. She ignored master plans. Instead, she acted as the sole designer and architect of her own reality. Every morning, she would meet with her foreman in what she called the Blue Room. She would hand him sketches drawn on whatever was at hand, scraps of paper, the backs of envelopes, or dinner napkins. The result was a mansion that grew like a living organism, expanding without symmetry, logic, or foresight. It was like a giant wooden onion, adding layer upon layer. Exterior walls became interior walls. Windows that once looked out onto the gardens were suddenly facing dark enclosed hallways. The statistics of the house are mind-boggling. At its peak, before the Great Earthquake of 1906, the house was even larger than it is today, towering 7 stories high. Even now, it remains a behemoth, containing 3 elevators, 6 kitchens, and 13 bathrooms. But it's the oddities that fascinate us. This is a place of architectural fossils. You can find skylights built into the floor. There are cabinets with less than an inch of storage space. It was impulsive construction. If Sarah didn't like a room that had just been finished, she wouldn't just renovate it. She would order it torn down or simply build a new room right over the top of it. For a long time, the world accepted the story that Sarah was crazy, that she was building trapdoors and confusing hallways to trick the ghosts. But what if we look at the house through the lens of logic rather than legend? When we analyze Sarah's life with modern eyes, the supernatural features of the house suddenly have very human explanations. First, let's look at the Switchback Staircase. This is one of the most famous features of the house, a staircase that has 44 steps but only rises about 9 feet. The steps are only 2 inches high. Legend says this was to confuse spirits, but the truth is much more painful. As Sarah aged, she suffered from debilitating rheumatoid arthritis. Walking was agony. She couldn't lift her feet high enough to climb a standard staircase, so she designed stairs with extremely shallow risers, allowing her to shuffle from floor to floor without pain. She installed elevators and added handrails all over the house as her mobility declined. These weren't traps for the dead, they were accessibility tools for a woman in pain. Second, consider the doors to nowhere. Why would anyone build a door on the 2nd floor that opens to a straight drop outside? Was it to trick a ghost into falling? No, it was the result of a natural disaster. In 1906, the massive San Francisco earthquake struck the Bay Area. The shaking was so violent that the mansion's 7-story tower collapsed and several wings of the house were crushed. Sarah was trapped in her bedroom and had to be dug out of the rubble by her staff. After the quake, Sarah didn't have the heart to fully rebuild the damaged sections. Instead, she simply boarded them up and sealed them off. That door opening to a drop? It likely used to lead to a balcony or a room that was destroyed in 1906 and never replaced. That staircase leading to the ceiling, it probably led to a floor that was condemned and boarded over. These aren't magic tricks, they are the scars of an earthquake that Sarah chose not to repair. And finally, there is the theory of passion, not fear. People who actually knew Sarah, her employees, her gardeners, her family, didn't describe her as a terrified, superstitious woman hiding from demons. They described her as calm, intelligent, and decisive. It is highly probable that Sarah simply loved architecture. She had unlimited money, no husband to tell her no, and no children to leave the money to. She treated the house as an artistic canvas. She subscribed to architectural magazines and loved experimenting with styles. The constant building wasn't a curse. It was a hobby. It was a therapeutic way to keep her mind busy and distract herself from the crushing grief of losing her family. When you stop looking for ghosts, you start to see the beauty amidst the chaos. Sarah spared no expense on craftsmanship. The home is a masterpiece of Victorian artistry. It features rare German chandeliers and Austrian art glass. The floors are intricate mosaics of mahogany, teak, and maple. The grand ballroom features stained glass windows etched with quotes from Shakespeare, revealing Sarah's sophisticated education and her love for literature. She was also incredibly forward-thinking. In an era of outhouses and candles, her home had push-button gas lighting, forced air heating, and an early intercom system. She even designed an indoor garden with a slanted floor and hidden trapdoors to recycle the watering runoff for the plants outside, an eco-friendly innovation decades ahead of its time. So how did the story get so twisted? On September 7, 1922, Sarah Winchester died of heart failure in her sleep. The legend says the workers stopped hammering the moment they heard the news, leaving nails half-driven into the walls. Sarah left her fortune to charity, but the house itself was sold. Just 9 months later, it was opened to the public by a couple named John and May Brown. The new owners quickly realized a fundamental truth of the tourism business. Victorian architecture is interesting, but ghost stories sell tickets. May Brown, the first tour guide, leaned heavily into the spiritualist angle. She was the one who spun the tales of the curse, the medium, and the mystery, cementing the narrative that exists today. When the famous magician Harry Houdini visited in 1924, his presence brought national attention to the Mystery House. Over the decades, marketing campaigns featured spooky silhouettes and promised haunted adventures. They took a private woman's sanctuary and turned it into America's most famous haunted attraction. Today, the Winchester Mystery House stands as a unique blend of history and folklore. It is easy to get lost in the exciting stories of seances, curses, and vengeful spirits. But the truth is perhaps more poignant and more human. Sarah Winchester was not a madwoman pursued by the undead. She was a woman of immense resources, navigating a life of immense sorrow. She built a world where she made the rules. In a life where she had lost control over the things that mattered most, her husband and her child, she created a space where she had total control. She could build a wall today and tear it down tomorrow. She could change the view from a window whenever she pleased. Whether you view the mansion as a trap for ghosts or a playground for an eccentric architect, it remains a singular achievement. It stands as a physical manifestation of grief processed through creativity. It is a puzzle that Sarah Winchester spent 36 years solving, one room at a time. And perhaps in the end, the house didn't need to make sense to us. It only needed to make sense to her.